Welcome to Night Shift Horror Stories, where I share my passion with telling horror stories. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to be the first to see my videos. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This happened July of 2014. I was en route home after a 2-week vacation. I was alone, towing a fifth-wheel camper with my pickup truck. It was about 10:30 on a Saturday night, and I was about 2 hours from home and was planning on making it home yet that night. I was in a stretch of 2-lane road in Wisconsin that has very few houses in a 30-mile-long road. It is wooded on both sides, with shallow, sloping ditches that are mowed by the county. It is fenced at the tree line. There is only one combination bar, restaurant, motel, campground through this whole barren road. I was already driving a little under the speed limit as deer were out a lot that night. I saw movement up ahead on the right shoulder, and assuming it to be more deer, I slowed way down. As I passed, I saw it was a woman. She was tall, lean, long brunette hair, wearing a white cropped top shirt, blue plaid pleated skirt and knee-high stockings. Honestly, looked like a Halloween outfit. Walking with the traffic, so I saw her from behind, just off of the shoulder in the short grass. I immediately assumed car breakdown, or fight with and had been put out, as she was miles from any house or business. I pulled over to a stop, hit the flashers, took a flashlight and went to see if she was alright. When I got to the rear of the camper, there was no one there. She could not have made it through the ditch, over the fence and into the woods in the time it took me to get to the rear of the camper. I was far enough ahead that she could not have made it to the rear of the camper before me. I walked back to where she had been, and I saw no sign that the heavy dew in the grass had been disturbed. She had just vanished into thin air without a trace she had ever been there. I made the rest of the trip home with the hair in my neck standing on end. I was driving along this road that stretches out over about 100 kilometers. It was almost 1 in the morning, and I was at the end of the road that is very desolate. Neighbors were kilometers apart from each other. It's a familiar route for me. I drive on it once every few months, just to go anywhere. Because of how isolated it is, there's no street lights, so you have to rely on your car headlights. On this particular night, I was feeling a little strange because the route didn't seem familiar, which is impossible because it's just one long road with the occasional turning roads. But I kept driving along towards the place where I turn around. I came to this certain point in the road where there was one lone house. Their car was parked in the driveway and I could see that there was somebody in the passenger seat. I thought it was kind of weird because it was so late/early. As I got closer to them, they turned the car on and flashed their high beam lights at me. I didn't pay much attention to this, but then I drove past them and looked into my rear view mirror to see what they were up to. They pulled out of their driveway onto the road, going the same direction I was. I was a little nervous at this point because it still looked unfamiliar to me. About 5 minutes up the road, I looked into my rear view mirror and the car that pulled out behind me was gone. I looked to my left and noticed an abandoned convenience store on the side of the road. This was something I remember driving past whenever I would drive up here, and I remember that directly in front of the store, a couple of feet away there's a phone booth. Both the store and the phone booth were run down and covered in graffiti. Neither had been used in a very long time. As I got closer, I saw that there was a dark figure behind the glass of the phone booth. They were looking right at me. I could see their eyes in my headlights. I got a little closer and they stepped out of the phone booth and started walking towards the road that I was on. I started to speed up and then this really bright light came on behind me, and this person just took off towards the back of the store. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the car that had flashed at me earlier. It was about 100 meters behind me. It followed me for another kilometer or so until we reached a turn-off road where it did a U-turn and went back the other way. To get home, I had to go back the way I came. I drove past the phone booth and there was nothing there, and then I reached the house where the car pulled out and it was back in its driveway. Driver still in the front seat. I was driving alone from eastern Colorado to Wyoming in the middle of the night on a dirt road. It was the type of darkness that most people never get to experience. Like being in the middle of the ocean. No cities or even small towns for hundreds of miles in every direction. Once I hit the border of Wyoming, the road became pavement. After about half an hour, I heard this loud bang and my car pulls hard to the middle of the road. I got a flat tire. I pulled over and got out of the car, and it's just quiet as can be. So dark, not a single light of any kind for hundreds of miles, except my dome and headlights. I start changing the tire by myself, feeling really uneasy about being alone in the middle of nowhere. So I get the tools and the spare out of the trunk and start changing the flat as fast as I can. For some reason, I'm trying to be quiet because it feels like every little sound I make is incredibly loud. I even turned my music off. I'm crouched down finishing up, tightening the lug nuts on the spare, when I hear from right behind me, "Need any help with that?" in a man's voice. I spin around and stand up fast, and no one is there. I look across the street in the other lane, and no one is there. I grab the tire iron and start yelling, "Who's there? Who's out there?" There were no response, it was dead silent. It was so quiet, I could hear my heart beating. I could barely see the other side of the road because of the darkness, but I knew that there was nothing anywhere around me but dirt and sagebrush. I spin those lug nuts on, crank 'em tight, spin the jack down, as fast as I could. The whole time I have that feeling someone is right behind me. I throw all the tools in the trunk with the flat and could not jump back in my car fast enough. I felt like someone was going to stop me from closing the door when I slammed it shut. I sped home to Wyoming freaked out the whole time while checking my back seat over and over again. About 6 years ago, my family and I moved from the West Coast to the Midwest. Dad and I drove while my mom and younger siblings flew. Dad was driving the U-Haul and I was driving the van that we had at the time. We stopped for dinner around 8 p.m. and realized we had about 6 hours of driving left and decided to push on through. GPS took us a very weird way and had us exit on a rural route highway instead of staying on the interstate. So we are following this little windy road for what seems like forever. It's just past midnight when all of a sudden we are in this little town. Everything seems old and the houses feel like they are 10 feet from the road. There's not a single street light in this town, so the only light is from our cars. We get to the house and my dad doesn't say anything about the town, so I assume it was my mind playing tricks on me. A few days later, I tell the story to my mom and she tells me Dad told her the exact same story, but thought since I didn't mention it that it must have been his mind playing tricks. I've tried to find this town again on many occasions, and I have never had any luck.